excited to talk about personal branding today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Me too.
This has been a long time coming. We were just chatting before we started recording that we can't even really remember when this conversation about getting you on the show first started. So I feel like my dream is coming true today.
Oh, you're the best. Yeah, I just felt like maybe we're just so on the ball that we work so far in advance. We've got like these people lined up, and I just was like, yeah. But I know I've been on your podcast, like I've been listening to your podcast. I've been listening to like how you coach people, so I'm familiar with how Dallas does things.
Cool. Good. I'm excited today because we have not had a branding expert on the show. So, for all of our listeners, be in a place where you can jot down some notes because Monique is going to be spilling the tea today. I think a good place to start is let's just start at the beginning by defining what a personal brand actually is. So, what is that exactly?
So I love when people ask this question because I always quote Jeff Bezos because I just feel like it's the perfect definition, which is your personal brand is what people say about you when you are not in the room. That's what it is. And we all have a personal brand, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not. People are already talking about us in some capacity. They have decided the who we are, the what we're good at, the what to recommend us for. And that could be something that we haven't necessarily curated, which is what my job is, to show you where all that juice is and how to like make sure that we're guiding that message. But a lot of people don't even know you already are a personal brand. So when people are like, where do I start? What, you already are one, but now it's time to like really direct the message.
Wow. So my brand is what people say about me when I'm not in the room.
That's
Can you
it.
say that?
That's it.
Yeah. Great. Okay. And I think that's a wrap. Like that's great.
Like, what are people saying about you? What are you saying about me, guys?
Yeah. But what I caught there was we can curate that. You called it directing the message.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's key.
So before we get into the nuts and bolts of what that looks like, let's make a case for the power of a personal brand. And I'd love to hear your take on the cost of not curating one.
Yes. So I like to look at people who are sometimes people who start off in their 9 to 5, for example, and they make a transition over to being a coach or going into their own business or something like that. They think that, okay, I had this job and I was just a face or an employee amongst everybody else. So one, if you're working 9 to 5, one, you should also be creating a brand over there because it makes you more valuable to your employer. When we think about top of mindness, that's really what the game we're in. Whether you have a job, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're seeking out other opportunities, are you top of mind when you think of the thing you say you're an expert in? So our goal is to make our name synonymous with the expertise we say that we do. We want to be the one who they think personal branding, they think Monique. They think, lead head coach, they think of Dallas. Like, what is the thing you want people thinking of and saying your name in the absolute next breath? That is so much, there's so much power in that, right? So when we create ourselves in a space and we create a reputation for ourselves, whatever you want your reputation to be. So mine is always like, I have a reputation for being very upbeat and bubbly, but also very straight, right? It's like, Monique's going to give you some Ackright with a little bit of sugar, but she's still going to give it to you, right? And I also try to pride myself on like having a really curated, but like genuine human experience, no matter what we're doing, right? Like I think of myself as an empath. I would love to say I separate myself from my business, like my emotion. That just isn't me, right? Like if you're with me, we're together in this, right? It's your blood, sweat, and tears, my blood, sweat, and tears together. And that's what I want people thinking of and saying about me when I'm not in the room. Like, Monique really gives a damn. So when I one day decide to write that book, when I one day decide I'm going to get on stage in this arena, or I one day decide I'm going to create a whole new business, my personal brand will follow me. The audience that I curated at that time, because I did a good job, that's the goal. You did a good job. You directed your message. Because I did that, they can open up Instagram a few months from now and be like, Monique started a cookware line? What? What are you even talking about? And you get the same promise, you get the same personality over there, just a whole completely different offer. But you're going to come with me if you had a great experience. That is the case for personal branding. It's you get to create something today, you get to create something tomorrow, but you don't have to start from scratch every single time if you've done it, if you've laid the groundwork, you've laid the foundation.
As I listen to you, I realize unconsciously that's the exact experience I had when I closed my business down, where I was a career coach for actors. I
Oh.
closed that down and started mentoring other coaches. And when I look at my revenue, year to year, it was exactly the same, even though I had this brand new business with a completely different target audience. And it's for the reason that you just stated. Like the experience I create for my people is the same, regardless of who they are. And so it just allowed me to grow that new business at lightning speed because I'd done years of laying the groundwork in the other
Mm-hmm.
business.
And
Wow.
it's that it's like I like to also say like because when people think about branding in general, they automatically think of logo. They automatically
Right.
think of visuals. And I like to really look at like dig deeper and look at the promise that at every single touch point, someone's going to have a similar experience. So whether that's through your visuals, whether that's through your communication, whether that's through them seeing you, whether they see you on video, whether they hear you on audio, they're going to have a similar experience. So if I'm
Yeah.
bubbly and inviting on a podcast, but then you go and look at my visuals and they're lackluster or just generic, there's a disconnect there for you. Yeah,
Confusing.
you might not
Right.
even know how to articulate it, but all of a sudden there's like a little bit of trust that's lost and
Mhm.
you're like, she's a little manufactured. And we can sniff the BS from a mile away, right? Like as human beings, that's what we do.
Right.
We're like, she says she's one way. But when I looked at this, or when I had this experience on her discovery call, or when I talked to so and so, they didn't say those things. They didn't make me
Right.
feel the things she says she's out here promising without even without actually even promising it, right? We take in all of these cues, and we don't even know what they are until they don't work, until there's a
Right.
disconnect.
Right. Yeah. We had to look at our email habits with myself and my team. Because I don't know if you can relate to this, but sometimes I'll get in a certain mindset with
Oh my
email,
God,
and it's just
email.
about like getting emails out of the inbox, right?
Yes.
But the part of our culture inside the hive is creating this sense of belonging. So what I just heard you describe was like, are we really on brand or
Mm,
creating this sense of belonging if you get a sentence and a half response to a customer service question that you ask,
100%.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I've been there too, where I'm so busy and I'm just like, can I just answer this? And I'm like, what is this email anyways? I'm like, like I get really well, like, as business owners, I'm just like, this is why we have team to help us do
Yeah.
the things that, while we do our other things. And it's true. Like I've had an experience where I've sent a very like short, curt email and the person was
Mhm.
like, where did this come from?
Monique?
Like, who is
Monique,
this?
hello?
Who is this? And I was like,
Have you
oh
been
my gosh,
hacked?
I'm so sorry. I thought you were somebody else. I just totally made it up. I don't even know
Mm,
what I said. But people catch
right.
it and it can
Yeah.
hurt you. It can really hurt your brand because people remember how you made them feel.
Yeah. Okay. So my takeaways so far are number one, we can curate our brand, which is different than manufacturing it.
Yes.
Our personal brand is what people say about us when we're not in the room, but even though brand colors and logo and fonts may play a small part in it, what I really hear you saying is our personal brand is the experience we create for
Yes,
people.
100%.
Okay.
The experience is
Mhm.
everything because tomorrow,
Mhm.
if they've had a great experience for months, for years, for however they've been following you, and all of a sudden your website goes down or some weird picture comes out, or someone's trying to, even if somebody's trying to, there's so many people that are like faking accounts and pretending to be other people online now.
Yeah.
It's insane. But people know if they've been following you right away, that's not you.
Yeah.
That's not how she talks. That's not even her picture. That picture's from like 5 years ago. I've caught a
Mhm.
lot of people doing that to people I follow religiously. And I'm the first
Yeah.
one to I'll be like, hey, someone's out here pretending to be your account. And it happens
Yeah.
so much. And people don't know.
People don't know. Right. Okay. So we're talking a little bit about content. We talked about emails, and every little touch point is a part of this brand experience. I know that you've talked about how every piece of content either adds to our brand or takes away from our brand. Can
Mhm.
you talk more about that?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of that example with the emails, like we got to be careful what we say, but also when Instagram's a perfect example because I think most people have a love-hate relationship with it if you're a business owner, right? It's,
Mhm.
you got to be on there because if there's an audience there or if your audience is there, and if you're not well versed in how to create visuals or videos that catch the eye, you may just be putting out things or you may hire an external team to do that. And if you haven't established what your brand voice is or what your brand aesthetic is, you've left it in the hands of other people who are interpreting what they think it is, and now it could come across as generic, where you use a lot of
Right.
stock photos,
Hmm.
or it's really yeah,
Canva templates that you don't take the time to really make your own.
right. And you're
Mm,
just going through the motions of it without really being intentional and really starting from the place of value, right? Like we're out
yeah.
here creating things, yes, to build brand awareness, but at the top of the mountain is the value. We always start with what's in it for the other person, right? So
Hmm.
when we do things like that, it just becomes white noise and no one's paying attention and you've spent a lot of
Hmm.
time. And if no one's paying attention, really, what are we doing here?
Right. And then I go and think that it's another like quick fix solution. Oh, maybe I need to make more reels or post a poll in my stories. Now that's going to be the solution, but what I hear you saying is if your personal brand is not clear and the actions you take are not aligned, they're not there isn't a way to fix that. Marisa Corcoran says that like no excellent copy can fix a muddied message.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah,
That's
and I
good.
think that's the point you're making here, which is you have to have personal brand clarity,
Yes.
and that from that place, you can look at different strategies and
Exactly.
tools. Okay.
And that also is
Mm,
around your visuals. You can't
yeah.
actually create visuals that are
Mm,
aligned with your brand if you don't know who you are as a brand and you don't know who you're speaking to. Right?
right.
Like our personal brand may have our name attached to it, but it's not for us. Right? We're out here to share a message and hope we're going to change somebody's life or we're going to have someone take a new action. And in order to do that, we have to grab their attention. In order to grab their
Mhm.
attention, we need something that's going to grab their attention. We need to be solving a problem. Like it's all the same business tools we know to do, but the only difference is your name is attached to it. And if you're a small business owner, your name is attached to it, right?
Right.
Whether we like it or not, people today want to know who they're giving their money to. So we can't
Mhm.
hide behind logos or, even the brand name anymore. People are like, well, why you? Why am I picking you? I could pick anybody in this oversaturated, everybody quit their job because COVID happened world, right?
Right.
Everybody's an entrepreneur now. Yay, power to us. Yay. However, um, it's become even more noisy.
Yeah. Yes. You mentioned something where I'm going to paraphrase here, but you talked about your brand is knowing who you are and knowing who you're speaking to. So let's imagine that I'm a brand new client. What is the process, or what are some initial questions that you would take me through in order to help me get clear on who it is I'm speaking to?
Ew. Um, well, my very first question is always around your big vision. It's always about the where we're
Mhm.
going, right? So I always start with the end in mind. Um,
Mhm.
the who you're trying to your audience or your influence is kind of like the next step. Like who are you trying to influence? Who do you want
Mhm.
to like because when you start with the end in mind and if I think about people who want to do speaking, it's like who do you want to speak
Okay.
in front of? Why do you want to speak in
Mhm.
front of them? What is your message? Why is that message relevant? What is going to be different in their lives after they hear you? right? So
Uh-huh.
it's
Yeah.
always from the where you're going. Or if you're writing a book, for example, right? Who is this? Who do you envision reading this book? Why?
Right.
What are the chapters like? What do you want them saying about you after they've shut the last page? That
Mhm.
tells me who you are.
Great.
It
Yeah.
tells me where we're going, right? Because we
Mhm.
forget, we try and start from the beginning and take the steps forward when that isn't actually how we get where we want to be, right? Because then we're just doing
Yeah.
a lot of things we think we should be doing. That's when we get into the posting to post or just launching a pod. You know, how many people want to launch podcasts and we're like, listen,
Right.
okay, podcasting is hard, okay? You need to know why you want all of these pieces because they are the stepping stones for the future you,
Mhm.
right? So I always start
Mhm.
with future you first, work
Okay.
backwards because then I know all the steps from that point.
Right. Yes. Okay, so I'm thinking about a large portion of our listeners who they got their coaching certification at some point in the last year and their business is pretty new. And I can almost feel their perfectionism like peaking as they listen to this conversation. So, what advice do you give to a coach who understands the value of the personal brand? Everything that you've shared so far, she's sitting, listening, nodding along, and yet she may not have crystal clarity about that long-term end game, or maybe she hasn't worked with enough clients yet to really understand the impact on her art audience.
Hmm.
So what would you say to that person who I think what I'm getting at here is, and it might just be another question. I'm going to save that question. So let's talk about what you would say to that person who may not have a lot of data to pull from, and then I've got a follow up.
So sometimes it's about like the where you're going in your business in terms of big vision, and sometimes it's about where you what you actually want for your life,
Mm,
right? So we as I find as business owners, there's the aspirations as a business person, that we want, whether that's being on a certain podcast or stages or things like that. But at the end of, I always love to go like the one step further, like what are we actually creating this for? And if it's so you can sit on a beach one day and have one client a week, is that what you're really looking for? Is it so you can
mm,
spend more time with your family? It's like what's the ultimate, if there was a top of a mountain when there isn't, for us ambitious
yeah.
people, what would that actually look like? Because a lot of the times we're building the thing that we're building that is not aligned with actually what we want. And then we wonder why we're not happy when we have it. Right. So I'm always about, you can have everything you want in this life, maybe not all at the exact same time,
Hmm.
right? But you've got to declare it, right? So I couldn't help you build the something without knowing what you think even your life end game may be. Like if we're looking, even all the way down to if you are one of those people who want to retire. What is this?
Yeah.
You want to open a bed and breakfast. Are you I always have my business hat on when I'm thinking about building a personal brand because I that's just the world I'm from, right? I don't know how to
Hmm.
do it any other way. And I think that's maybe a little different from what I do and maybe what some other coaches do.
Hmm.
Really looking at, are you building a business foundation that support your dreams on every level and every scale, right? So you
Okay.
may not have all the clients you want yet, but my first thing to you would be, I need you to go work with more clients, right?
Yeah.
Like my goal for you is always first and foremost, let's build a sustainable business. Let's make sure
Yeah.
you love this. Let's make sure you found clients you love to work with because your messaging and how you show up, what you talk about will come from that place. So the
Hmm.
more people you work with, the more you're going to understand your needs. So for if I even just look at my own business, I didn't start out in personal branding. It was
Hmm.
I do business coaching. Great. I couldn't figure out if that was a niche, if there was a million other people doing it. Like I was just like, I know I can help people problem solve in their business. I've done this enough times. I can do this. And while I was out here doing this, there was a lot of things that would come out of my mouth that other people would hear that other coaches weren't actually talking about. And that had a lot
Right.
to do with the visuals. It had to do with your, showing up with your personal style. How do you speak and express yourself? All these little pieces. And it actually took, the more I shared, and this is like what I would say to anyone who's starting out is just come out here and start sharing your message, your methodology, what you believe, because you don't know until you know. And I had
Hmm.
someone
Yeah.
in my audience come to me when I was going to launch a whole new program. And she said, Monique, can I be honest with you? And I said, of course you can be honest
And
with me. And she's like, can you just own the personal branding space and just like knock off all the other shit? I was like,
Fabulous.
what? She was like, everyone knows that's what you do except you, but you want to do all these other blah, blah, blah things. And it's just confusing. And I was like, is that what I talk about all the time? She's like, you talk about it nonstop. You don't even know
Got
you're
it.
talking about it. And that's when I started doing more research and looking at who were the leaders in this space and what is it I needed to know? What was I missing? And
Mhm.
how do I integrate that with women CEOs? And like, really, it took me sharing, like, just keep on sharing for it to formulate on its own.
Right.
So we don't always have the answer, but
Yep.
the hiding out and not sharing is what's going to cost us. We'll never get there trying to figure it out on
Right.
our own.
Yeah.
It's like us talking to ourselves about ourselves. What are we talking about?
Right. Right. Okay. So I cannot figure my personal brand out in a vacuum. It figures me out
Yes.
by talk just noticing what it is I talk about, what themes come up.
Yes.
But I also love that what you shared about connecting, and I've never thought of it this way, connecting the ideal vision I hold for my life back to my personal brand, because I think sometimes I only think about my business goals and I don't connect those to how that
Mm,
impacts my life goals. So that was really helpful.
good. And I think that comes from me always, like, I just find like most people who are building a business, they start as a solopreneur.
Yeah.
In I always say you got to be a little bit crazy to be an entrepreneur, right? Like you are voluntarily putting yourself at risk every single day. You put your
Oh
money
yeah.
at risk, you put your freedom at risk, you put your financial security, like so many things because you want this dream. And for what? What are we really
Mm,
after? You have to know it's a lot of self-awareness there, but you have to know what is this all for to make it worth it to get up when it's hard.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. Not to mention, like, what we've all signed up to do is learn in public.
Mm,
Right? Like, if I'm really gonna figure this thing
scary.
out, I have to put myself out there and make mistakes in front of people. That's the job
Yeah,
of
and
an entrepreneur.
it's terrifying, but it's also
Mm,
how you create your diehard fan base.
yeah.
People wanna
Mm,
see people doing things. They don't wanna
it's
see fake, manufactured, "We have no idea how you got to that $1,000,000. I don't think that could
mhm.
ever be me." They don't want that's not really what people are drawn to anymore. People are like, okay, I got to see all your scrapes, your stumbles, and you picked yourself back up. That's who I want to be. That's who I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Resilience is sexy.
Completely. Yeah, and we all need to this is one of our themes inside of my program, but it's normalize the roller coaster. We don't
Mm,
talk about not only the ups and downs, but those long stretches of flat road,
mm.
right? Where everything is fine and we're not quite sure what the next move is. And like, we need to talk about that more. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
glad
people
you're
don't
bringing it
because it's
forward.
not sexy or they don't think it's
No,
interesting.
right.
But that's the reality. And if people talked about it
Mhm.
more, maybe the space wouldn't be as crowded.
Oh. You raise an interesting point about like things being sexy and interesting. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would respond to someone listening who worries that they aren't interesting enough or flashy enough or stylish enough or extroverted enough or different
Mm.
enough to be personal brand worthy. What would you say to that
Mm.
person?
I would say that every single one of us are 110% unique because we've all had our own lived unique experiences. There is no
Mhm.
one like you. So even if you don't consider yourself stylish or all of those things, first of all, you can hire people to make you look a bit more stylish if that's really what the case is. That's
If
one of
that's
the
a
reasons
value,
we do. Like
right?
if it's really an issue, that's one of the reasons we put it into our program. Like how do you show up? I always like to say, how do you show up as your best polished professional self? Right? That makes
Mhm.
you feel great because when you look great, you feel great. Your version of great, whatever that is. Right? And
Right.
I think people need to just look at the people, just not only that they're drawn to, but if you look at some of the other people, and I don't want to, I'm like really trying not to call out anybody it like that people would know to be like, they're not, I don't find them stylish, right? But I find their content so great. Like I'm trying to like be really sensitive. I'm like, who do I think of? You know what I think of? I think of like Seth Godin. Seth Godin
Okay, that's a great
okay,
example.
Seth
Yes,
Godin,
he will not be surprised to hear that
right? And
you
he
don't
would
think
not
he's
be offended because he does
stylish.
not give two shits what anybody thinks about him, okay? But he is, to me, he is brilliant. His books are brilliant. His philosophy is brilliant. What he writes is brilliant. Like his mind is like he is brilliant. What he is on, and I'm listening. I'm listening. I don't care what he looks
Yes.
like, right?
Yep.
So value first, because you can have
Mhm.
all the flash and all the splash. If you do not have value, if you are not making someone else's life better or having them take a new action, then you're just entertainment. It's a reality show. Great. You came here. You watched a really great Instagram live. You did nothing different. If that's the case, those people, there's nothing wrong with that. That's entertainment, but we're business owners. So I can do all the flash and the splash, but if you don't take a new action, I've failed.
Mhm.
So always,
Right.
if you're bringing value, real value, and you're showing up as you, like what I like to say is like, when you show up on video, and this is a challenge for people, a big challenge is like, I don't want to show up here. I don't want people looking at me. Believe it or not, Monique had that in the very beginning. I wanted it perfect. And because
Yes.
I spend so much time on my appearance, I was like, well, that means this video has to be perfect. And what it did was really hurt my business because when I was ready to launch something, I only came out when it was ready to launch. Like I'm like, it's open now. And we all know what does that do? Nothing. People are like, who are you? What is
Right. And what's open?
what are
Right.
you selling? What is your face? I don't even know you. That didn't mean anything. So when
Mhm.
I discovered, well, I got a coach who was like, Monique, this is what you're gonna do. You are gonna go, and this is when Instagram was newer. So this was probably like
Yeah.
5 years ago, 6, 7, I don't remember. But she said, I need you to go live for 30 days straight, short, long, whatever you want. Talk about whatever you want. But this isn't for them. This is for you. I need you to get comfortable talking about your area of expertise, however you do that. And that like it broke me open because
Yeah.
so many things happened. I first had a phone in my hand. I was wearing all this, like, I had lint all over my sweater. I then got a tripod. I kicked the tripod over in the middle of the live. I had like the craziest, weirdest haircut. Like, everything was so weird when I look back. And I tried to take these, I put them on YouTube. I tried to take some of these pictures, videos down. And my clients were like, please don't. I love to see this. I love to see the evolution of it. But it took practice. And I think people underestimate the finished product they see of people out here online. They don't
Mhm.
see the years it took to be here, the coaching, whatever they invested in. A lot of people have media coaches, like, people who teach them how to do interview, stylists. Like a lot of my clients, we do their photo shoots, we hire a stylist. They didn't have those clothes in their wardrobe beforehand. They got to pick and choose, but it was really like, this is how I want to be showing up versus how I was showing up. So that is a long way to answer your question of value first.
Yeah, value first. And for me, what I want to underscore, thank you for sharing all of that, but what I want to underscore that I really heard and took in was a personal brand is not about the flash and the splash. It's about value and the experience you create for people.
100%. It's
So
about your message.
it's about your message.
What are you here for? What are you here to deliver?
Yeah. Yeah. So being an extrovert is not a prerequisite to having a personal brand.
Absolutely not. Most of my clients are introverts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Can we talk about some mistakes? We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but what mistakes do people make when it comes to their personal brand?
Well, I think we've touched on a couple of them, which was one, hiding out until you think you're ready. Trying to make
Okay.
it perfect because nobody wants a perfect finished product. Um, Thinking you don't have any value out here to share. So you don't share anything. And then the opposite, you're out here sharing everything and all things. Like you don't actually have a lane or an expertise you're trying to own. So you talk about everything. You're like, I am a coach, but I'm also a baker and I'm a dog mom and I don't know, weave crochet on the weekends. Like all of those things are wonderful for background conversation, but it always again it comes down to what is the message out here? What do you want people to know and do now that they've interacted with you? So I think I love multi-passionate people. I'm one of them. But when you're starting out, pick a lane. Pick a lane, get good in the lane, be known in the lane, then diversify. People like to diversify a little too soon and then a lot too soon. And then we wonder why people are confused or don't know when to hire us. They're like, she's really good at this and really good at that. But they don't start to connect you with the problem they solve. You're not the first person they think of.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So not owning a lane is a big one. And I think another one is not expanding their network. So so a lot of the times when we're in that perfectionism, we don't tell anybody what we're doing. We don't want to put ourselves out there too much, but there's so much power in building relationships and building a network of people who support you, like you, would endorse you to their other people. That's way fast. You can build a business way faster building your network than coming out here online.
Yeah, heard. That's really golden. So, to wrap things up, how can someone listening today get started toward developing their own personal brand?
One of the first things you can do is, decide the lane you're going to be owning. Whatever that lane is, that's first and foremost. Like I don't even know what they said last year. It was like 5 billion coaches or something in North America or something crazy. And it was like, okay, that's a great stat. Thank you for sharing. And what's your lane as a coach? What's interesting, different, unique about how you deliver what you deliver or who you go after, whatever. Like try and start defining like what I call like your secret sauce. Then clean up your digital house. Meaning anything and all things that are online that are no longer aligned with how you want to be perceived today, erase it, delete it, or take it down. That's not who we are anymore, whatever that looks like. So that's profile photos, bios, even personal tags that your family loves to tag you in, picnics from 4 years ago. And you're just like, Grandma, really, what is happening here? This is not the picture I want my clients seeing right now. And if it's websites, interviews, things like that, like start taking those pieces offline because you don't need them anymore. If it no longer serves you, take it down. So it's like that. Is it adding to your brand or is it taking away? Also, if you've got a personal account, this is a big one where people are like, well, I have a personal account for Instagram. Should I delete it and go start my business account and all of these things? And this is totally my own opinion. I always tell my clients, if you have a personal account, just put it on private. You don't actually need everyone to know everything. And you are out here curating what people know about you, right? Because some people are afraid because they put everything on public. So don't put anything online that you wouldn't put on a billboard and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Definitely start telling people what you do. So start expanding this network before you're ready. Just be like, we are all wrapped up in our own lives. So if you were, a tech analysis last year and now you are a coach and you're looking for new clients, tell your network, right? Just be like, hey, I started a coaching business. I'm loving it. I know this is my calling. If you know anyone who needs X, would you mind sending them my way? And you would be surprised. Shocked, right? Because, there's not a lot of coaches out there doing that. So if it comes up in conversation, they'll be like, you know what? I have a friend who's doing that now. You should talk to her. I have a 21 step process. So there's like a lot of things, but that's how I would start. Definitely. Establishing your values of like who you are as a brand is another one. Your values are what drive you, and we buy from people who are aligned with our values. So spend some time trying to figure out what those are.
And then, like you mentioned earlier, spend some time thinking about the vision that you hold for your own life.
Yes, that big vision is your compass.
Yeah.
And you'll start to, when you have the compass, you'll know what to say yes to, you'll know what to say no to in terms of opportunities, even in terms of clients you want to work with. Because, when you're new, a lot of the times you're like, oh, I'm just going to take this client. And you already know from the first discovery call that they weren't meant for you. But you
Completely.
take them on
Yeah.
anyways. It's a
Yeah.
lovely lesson to be learned.
I was gonna say it's like actually do that once,
Yes.
everybody.
Okay. You have to do it at least
You
once.
have to do it. Ignore your intuition. You know
Yes.
exactly what I'm talking. Do it once because that's how you really get over that mistake.
Yes. You'll never make it. You won't. Usually you won't. I made the mistake, I think, probably 3 times, but I can count it.
Me
I can
too.
count
Monique,
it
me
because I was like,
too.
you ignored it, Monique. You ignored it. You thought, and here we are. Deal with it.
Yeah, that's a
Sometimes it needs
great.
to hurt to be reminded.
True. It's true. It's true. Wow, I have so many takeaways from this conversation. Thinking about my brand as the experience I create for people and really thinking through what is it I want them to say about me when I'm not in the room. You
Mm.
gave us some very tangible first steps, especially just thinking about cleaning up our digital house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as part, again, because I'll speak personally, I had a very successful business serving actors, like I told you about earlier. If you like scroll enough on Google, you will see remnants of that. And it's confusing. It's
Mm.
really confusing for my audience. So being intentional about ensuring that my brand reflects where I'm going rather than where I've been.
Yes. And
Yeah.
to that point, it
Mhm.
depends on how does it add to the where you're going as well.
Yeah,
Because there's
right.
things you may have done in your past that are perfect for people being like,
Yeah.
oh, look at her experience there. That totally makes sense for why she does what she does. So
Hmm.
really just looking at if it doesn't serve you, take it down. But if you
Right.
think it adds to where your credibility or where you're going, it's fine. Like
Yeah.
nobody goes past the second page of Google anyways, all right? You don't have to go too far back.
Yeah,
That
right.
first page, real estate, super gold.
And then I think the big takeaway for me, at least today, is figuring this out requires putting yourself out there. So the
Mm.
more willing you are to put yourself out there and fine tune your personal brand and look for themes and make mistakes, the more swiftly you'll arrive
Yeah,
at an aligned brand. It's
100%.
helpful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was such a fun, illuminating conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And so, for all of our listeners, we have links to Monique's Insta and her website in the show notes. Make sure to follow her on Instagram because if you want to see an expert on branding in action, you just live that every day. It's inspiring.
Thank
So,
you.
thanks. Yeah, of course. Thanks again for coming on the show. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again next week.